Game On magazine is chatting to Gail Baerecke, the general manager of the Chris Berger Petro Jackson Players Fund. Gail, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me on your show, Dan. I'm absolutely fine. Thank you for asking.
Gail, let's start off with what exactly is the Players Fund?
The Players Fund is a non-profit organization which started in 1980 and exists for catastrophically injured rugby players. And that really simply means a rugby player who sustained a life-changing injury. And two examples of that would be a spinal cord injury where there's damage to the spinal cord, or a serious head injury where that person can't function normally afterwards.
Gail, what exactly is the demographic in South Africa when it comes to rugby injuries? I mean, we don't really hear of professional rugby players hurting themselves catastrophically. I mean, this year we have had two, with Patrick Lambie's severe concussion and Julian Redenley's breaking his neck. But generally speaking, you don't hear professional guys hurting themselves. So what are the demographics in South Africa?
Yes, Dan, you're absolutely right. Obviously, with a professional rugby player, they are a lot more conditioned. One would expect them to be a lot fitter. And I'm not saying that schoolboy rugby or club rugby players aren't, but generally as a group, your professional rugby player that's his profession. So he's on that field in tip-top condition, and it's less likely that he's going to sustain a serious injury because of that. It doesn't mean to say it doesn't happen, because rugby is a contact sport, and with contact sports, accidents do happen. Even freak injuries happen. And the two examples that we saw this year are perfect examples of that. Pat Lambie and Julian Redenley. A serious head injury which really could have had a very different outcome for Pat. And obviously with Julian, sustaining a fractured, dislocated cervical vertebra in the neck, it could have been much worse with a spinal cord injury. So there are two examples. There have been a few other professional rugby players who have sustained spinal cord injuries over the years, but less so, as you're absolutely right, though, with when you mentioned that it's few and far between.
Gail, the Boxmart Rugby Safety Program is a program that is run in a partnership between SARU and the Players Fund.
Correct.
It's been around since 2009, and
that's right.
It's doing wonders in creating well-rounded rugby coaches and anyone else that's involved, referees, management. What are the positive spin-offs of that program be?
Dan, the program primarily creates awareness, and it's the awareness of promoting safe rugby in South Africa. If we've got a sport where we have an unacceptably high level of serious injuries, we need to do something about that. And that's exactly what SA Rugby and ourselves did. So by educating anyone who's involved with rugby, particularly coaches and referees, you're making them aware of the high-risk areas in rugby. And by doing so, making sure that they're taking responsibility for the safety of their rugby players on the field. So it's going to promote safe rugby. It's going to promote the game of rugby in our country, which is something that we all love, and obviously encourage young boys and young girls to continue playing and wanting to run onto that rugby field.
Definitely, Gail. A big problem with something like Boxmart is that you never know the amount of people that are saved through the program, because we'll only ever know the guys who hurt. But since the program's been in existence and you look at the average injuries per year, has there been a decrease?
Yes, Dan, there definitely has been a decrease, and I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but there's been a significant decrease. And there's also been a noticeable change in the phase of play of serious injuries. They used to be in the scrum, and they're no longer in the scrum because the scrum laws were changed. And those scrum law changes were initiated by SA Rugby and by Boxmart, and then World Rugby followed because we had an unacceptably high level of scrum injuries in one particular year, and we just thought we can't carry on like this. We've got to do something about it. So the injuries tend to be in the tackle now. So that is really where we are focusing on technique with our new BoxSmart 5, which is being rolled out in the new year. And we've noticed a huge decrease in the number of serious injuries. And I think I also have to mention that it's not only about when the injury happens, it's also about how the injury is managed on the field. And we are seeing amazing stuff happening there. If you have paramedics that know what they're doing, rugby coaches, referees that know what to expect and how to manage the injury on the field, you automatically making sure that that injury is not further, there isn't a further injury, it's not worsened on the field by poor management. So good management is also very much part of the positive spin-off of BoxSmart.
Gail, let's shift our focus back to what the fund does. I mean, the
Yes.
Players Fund is one of the Springboks' main organizations that they
Correct.
that they look after.
Yes.
And so a lot of people will know them. I mean, for a very long time, the Players Fund logo has been on the shorts of the Springboks. But our readers may not necessarily know exactly what the fund does. So once a catastrophic injury has happened anywhere in South Africa, what is the process? What happens?
And the process is initially, obviously, it's very much a hospital process. The patient or player is in hospital, and our job is to go to the hospital, meet the family, support the player, support the family, explain what is happening, talk to the medical staff, and assure the family that there is a fund that is going to be there to partner their son and their family for the rest of their lives. And obviously at that stage, one never really knows what the permanent outcome is. So it's difficult to give all the bad news right in the beginning. One wants to just give hope and make sure that they understand what the fund's role is. And then after that, once the acute phase of the spinal cord injury has been managed by the medical staff, and there's very little that we can do from that point of view other than support, is we then liaise with the rehabilitation team and we assist with the purchasing of all the relevant equipment that will be needed once the long-term outcome of that injury is known. And that equipment is probably in the region of about 300,000 to 400,000 rand initially, with wheelchairs, cushions, beds, commodes, and any other assistive devices that the player needs. And from then onwards, it's our responsibility to make sure that the equipment is maintained and replaced if and when necessary. And what we have moved into more sort of away from the role, the focus of just being there to provide equipment, is we try and partner with the rugby player. And if I could just spend a little bit of time just explaining this, a partnership is where we walk alongside the player who is injured, and we try and establish what his goals and his hopes and dreams are for the next 5 to 10 years. And then we try and see if we can help with that. And the uniqueness of the fund is that we recognize that every player is unique. Everyone is different. Everyone has different hopes and dreams. They have different aspirations. So we can never say this is what we do for this person and that person, because everyone is different. You might have a different role or to play in the next 5 or 10 years compared to someone else who was injured last year, who wants to go to university and study. And then it's a matter of us trying to get into university and try and work out all the logistics of doing something like that and help families. Not everyone is well resourced. Not everyone is able to look after spinal cord injuries in their homes. So it's the demographics of the Players Fund is so interesting, and I think that's what makes it so unique, is because we're a unique and interesting country. Our rural compared to city areas dictate what the resources are available to those players. And then you've got provinces that provide different resources, and less so in some provinces than others. So we have to treat everyone as an individual based on what their needs are, what their hopes and dreams are, and also where they live.
Definitely, Gail. You've been part of the fund for many years now, and
Yes,
you've obviously met a lot of the funds. Well, you've met probably all of them. Um,
I have.
if
Yes.
you have to give a broad overview of the quality of quadriplegic that rugby quads are, or even brain injuries and et cetera. What would your statement be? What is the type of person that's on the fund that the fund looks after?
I'm so glad you asked me that question because I was just visiting two of our recipients down south yesterday in Carltonville and Rietfontein. And as I was driving along, I just thought to myself, I'm so lucky. Anyone is lucky to be part of this fund because everyone sees us as being the white flag, the lifesaver, the phone call, just please help us, we're there. But in fact, the way we see it as working at the fund is we are the winners because we get the inspiration from our rugby players who have been injured. And it's the most phenomenal thing because we have learned so many lessons. I've been with the fund for 11 years. This job has changed me and changed me for the better. And I can say that it's done the same for everyone who's been through the fund. It's a privilege to be part of it. It's a privilege to be exposed to incredible young men who, in spite of huge challenges, really dig deep and show the strength of their human spirit. It is quite phenomenal to be part of this organization for that reason.
Gail, as we end off, in the beginning of the interview, you mentioned that the Players Fund is a non-profit organization, which means that you require the assistance of the general public, the private sector, unions, SARU, to assist in helping you guys to raise funds. If somebody would like to donate, how do they go about it?
Donate is, gosh, it's such a big word today, and we always are requesting donations. There are so many ways of donating to the fund. One can go onto our website, and there are various ways directly via EFT. There's a SnapScan facility there as well. And then we also have a legacy program that we are promoting, where we're encouraging people to consider when they are writing up their wills to think about donating to a cause that they feel passionate about. And there's so many rugby players and public in South Africa that live for rugby. So consider just leaving something in your will. It's a very easy thing to organize. And we'd be so grateful. It's a long-term process, obviously. And then, of course, there are other ways. We encourage debit orders because it's like a trickle effect. It's something as small as 50 Rand a month that's easy enough to sign up on our website as well. And then, of course, at the end of the year, in lieu of Christmas gifts, a lot of companies send us a check and say that instead of Christmas gifts for the staff, we'd like to give you a check for X number of £1,000. And we're just incredibly grateful for that because it means that we can continue the work that we do. And that's very important for us to do.
Definitely, Gail. Game On Magazine would like to thank you so much for spending some time with us as you took us through the ins and outs of the Players Fund. And we would like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all the hard work that you, Tori and Eleanor, as well as Mornay do for the various catastrophically injured rugby players. So thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much for interviewing me, Dan.
Thanks, Gail.